everybody, we're at the Canvas Hotel for the next step of our teacher education training with dealing with STEAM. We're here with Jame, who's the artist who painted these two pieces behind us and many other incredible works. We came here because he's a perfect example of how STEAM blends into everyday life. Now, your work is incredibly special because it doesn't have a set direction to it. You could turn it up, down, left, and right, maybe backwards if you really wanted to, but you get a different lens on it every time. How important is that to your work?
Well, it's really important because, for an artist, you just get bored of things quickly. So if you get bored of a work you paid, thousands of dollars for, then it's just hard. Because I just get bored of things and I'll just twist it because they work perspectively. And they'll completely change, even though the colors are still the same, but you can. It may not look as good, but you can still do it, and whatever fits you in the moment.
And you brought up perspectives, which is one of our big things we like to look at, is finding different lenses to look at stuff. We, of course, have STEAM, and this is artwork obviously behind us, and one of the lenses we have is science. How do you blend science into your artworks?
Well, I love psychology, so I love to just look into works of Carl Jung. I like Jordan Peterson, Terence McKenna. I'll just try to find that, or just literally look into any sort of science, like finding the scintilla lactuous, I think they're called. There's just really cool things out there, and somehow my brain makes art out of them. I'm not even sure how it happens. I just find it, my curiosity, I never really liked it in school, but for some reason I've just been very drawn to learning just about anything. My learning of science out of anything else, it's definitely helped me understand the world a little bit better, even though I know just about this much, maybe.
Right, and one of our big things is the quality of questions will determine the quality of what actually comes out. Yeah. You've went out and asked these questions about how does this blend into artwork, or how can I communicate this? What kind of questions about the world influence the work you create?
Oh, man. I just question everything. Because if we don't, then we're just it's just like getting stuck somewhere. You don't want to get stuck inside the box. If you can't think outside the box, then you're not really even thinking. You have to try to learn how to critically think, and then for me, I just try to think situationally how things are going to work. I'll think of, before I even make a piece, sometimes I'll think about where it's going to be hung, how I want it to look, what I want things to smell like, sound like, and I'll just, any lens that I can to make something the best it can possibly be, because I want people to experience things, because people are losing experience now. And so I'm trying to bring that back. And this is the first step.
One of the things we look at in this training is actually called the 4 C's. You've said one of them, which is critical thinking. The others are cooperation, collaboration, and creative thinking, which I think you embody all of them in your profession, what you do, and how you continue to question the world, and it creates things out of it. Back to more of the hard STEAM education. Do you blend technology into creating your work?
Yeah, I'll use Photoshop to rule it out and make a grid so I can make all the lines it's just easier for me to map them out, because if I do it by memory, I'm just gonna mess up, and then I'm gonna paint it, and then I'll just be upset because I can't get it perfect, and I want to get it as seemingly perfect as I can, because I know nothing can be perfect. Right. So as long as it seems perfect and I can get it to look the way I want it to. Because even though, I can do something that's not how I want it to, and it can still turn out cool, but I know exactly how it's going to work. And I can change the colors and see which way for me that it'll fit, and how I can correlate it with the space, if I'm thinking in a spatial reference.
And the cool thing that we're trying to emphasize with technology is that it's not just a means to an end. Technology is coding, programming, and that's it. Technology is also a tool to help all these other elements of STEAM. It can influence art. It especially can help math. It can help with science. All of these things. It's not about tech for tech's sake, but tech for the sake of everything. Linking it all together.
Yeah.
I just touched briefly on math, but your works are obviously very geometric. They have some math involved. What kind of math process goes into your creative thinking?
I'm not sure. Mainly the math happens when I'm trying to map it out and I'm trying to find like the space in between. This one's not really a good example, but sometimes I'll try to find exactly how much space in between. So I'll say if I'm making 6 blocks and I want to fit it on a certain size canvas, I'll take how much of the block that I want to use. Say I want it 3 inches. So I'll take 3, 6, or I'll do it 3, 18 inches, and then try to figure out the space in between there and get it all mathematically correct, because then I obviously want to make it as symmetrical as possible. Because I love symmetry.
And the cool thing is, just like with tech, it's not math for math's sake. It's like, how many apples does Johnny have? If you bought 81 and sold 33.
Yeah.
It's taking them and using it in a practical application that has science and feeling and a human element to it. It's using this math as a goal instead of where you're doing math so we can do things perfectly. You said there's not a way to do it perfect, and that's the great thing.
Yeah.
The last thing I want to touch on is engineering, obviously, right? There is a very physical and traditional definition to it, where it's engineering is actually physically creating it. Now, I know you go through a lot of processes in getting these on the paper, but it's more than just the canvas itself. What kind of work goes into something just as simple as making a frame for an artwork like this?
Well, that'd be a good question for my father, since he made the frames. But I mean, it's really just math and figuring out the dimensions of how far you want the space in between. Like, these are called floating frames, so I want them to seem as if they're floating, and then the frame gives them a place to exist. And then you want to figure out how big you want the width and how tall, length, width, and then height. And you can. It's pretty easy. I mean, just to make it seamless, because that's the hard part, or make it to look as simple as possible. Because the things that seem simple are actually the hardest to do.
And sometimes when students think of the word engineering, they get a little bogged down with the traditional, like, we're building something cool and interesting and neat. It's brand new, it's never been seen before. But engineering happens at every level of education, even just very, very simple things like building a frame. Having it perfect, how you assemble it, how you line it up. It's all engineering combined in a very real application that still takes the creative thinking, problem solving, and it's got the whole thing blended into it.
Yeah, I think engineering is basically trying to understand how something works. So you're trying to find the smallest, you'll take just like a part of this. You'll just find one length, and then you'll figure out how. You'll need the one length to figure out how to make the next one the same exact, and then so you can put things together. If you're not breaking it down to try to figure out how it works, then you're not going to understand it completely. It's like us. We can kind of Google everything and try to find the answer for something without knowing the context. So with engineering, you're able to understand how the smallest unit of it and how the small units make up the big unit. And to me, that's engineering. Because that's all I want to do, is I want to understand how everything works, the world, perception, and those kinds of things, how our brains work, and then put it on paper, canvas, whatever that makes the eyes kind of dance and light up. Something to give us hope, because we all need some hope out here.
Right, especially in these times, and thank you very much for telling us about this and your wonderful artworks. You touched on engineering has a different definition for you than it does for most people. And I think that's something that teachers can take and bring into their classrooms, is that things like science may mean something entirely different to every different student. Science to one might be biology, studying and question asking. Science to others might be creating, experimenting, and trying new things. So thank you very much for your time. Once again, we're here at the Campus Hotel looking at James' wonderful artwork, and we will see you guys in the rest of the training.